Everybody like and subscribe, praise the bell icon. Story number 1.
Late one summer evening in a quiet suburban neighborhood, a new family moved into the house at the end of Willow Lane. The house was old, with peeling white paint and windows that seemed to stare blankly like dark eyes. The family was excited, but quickly noticed something odd. No one in the neighborhood ever really came out after dusk. Kids vanished indoors before sunset, and the street was eerily silent at night, except for the faint sound of footsteps. The youngest daughter, Emily, was the first to sense something wrong. On her first night in the house, she woke up to whispers drifting through the walls, soft, unintelligible murmurs that made her skin crawl. When she told her parents, they brushed it off as the house settling. But the whispers grew louder each night, turning into faint chanting that seemed to move from room to room. One evening, Emily noticed that the clock in the living room had stopped at exactly 3:13 a.m. every morning. Curious and unable to sleep, she decided to stay awake and watch it. As the clock hands ticked closer to 3:13, the temperature in the room dropped sharply. Shadows in the corners thickened, twisting into shapes that looked like human figures. Suddenly, the whispering became a chorus of voices, repeating a name, hers. Desperate, Emily tried to leave the house but found the front door wouldn't budge. The windows, too, seemed sealed by some unseen force. She heard footsteps upstairs, slow and deliberate, though no one else was home. When she finally gathered the courage to ascend the stairs, each step creaked beneath her weight, echoing in the suffocating silence. At the top, the hallway lights flickered, revealing dozens of old photographs hanging crookedly on the walls. Each one was of children, their faces blurred, but the eyes unmistakably hollow. Emily realized with growing horror that the names written beneath the photos matched those whispered in the night. Suddenly, a cold hand grasped her shoulder. She spun around, heart pounding, but no one was there. The door at the end of the hall, previously closed, now stood wide open, revealing a dark room lined with mirrors. Emily stepped inside, the mirrors reflecting endless versions of herself, all with the same hollow eyes staring back. She heard the voices again, now louder and more urgent, chanting, "Join us!" Frozen, she watched as her reflection in one mirror smiled malevolently, even though her own face remained terrified. The reflections reached out through the glass, fingers stretching toward her. Panicked, Emily slammed the door and ran down the stairs, finally managing to pry the front door open. She burst into the street, gasping for air as the oppressive atmosphere seemed to lift. But when she looked back at the house, the windows were dark once more, the peeling paint no different, yet the whispering continued faintly on the wind. Neighbors who had once been polite now avoided eye contact, their smiles forced and hollow. They never invited the family in, and the streetlights flickered with unsettling regularity. It wasn't long before the family moved away, but the house at the end of Willow Lane still stands, waiting quietly for the next family brave enough to move in and listen to the whispers behind its walls.
Story number 2.
On a quiet suburban street where every lawn was perfectly manicured and the mailboxes gleamed in the morning sun, something sinister lurked just beneath the surface. Emily had moved into the neighborhood only a few weeks ago, drawn by the promise of safety and community. But from the moment she arrived, she felt an inexplicable chill, like the shadows themselves were watching her. At first, it was little things. The faint sound of footsteps in the hallway when no one was home, the feeling of eyes following her as she walked to the mailbox, and the persistent hum of a radio she never turned on. The neighbors were polite but distant, their smiles tight and their conversations brief. Emily noticed that no one ever seemed to be outside after dark. When she asked why, she was met with nervous glances and vague excuses about early bedtimes. One night, as the moon hung low and full, Emily was jolted awake by a soft tapping at her bedroom window. She peered through the blinds but saw only the empty street bathed in silver light. Dismissing it as a branch or a stray animal, she tried to go back to sleep. The tapping came again, louder this time, and then a faint whisper she couldn't quite make out. Heart pounding, she pulled back the curtain slowly and gasped. There, standing just beyond the glass, was a figure, a pale, thin man with sunken eyes that gleamed unnaturally in the moonlight. His mouth stretched into a cruel smile, revealing teeth that seemed too sharp, too jagged to be human. He raised a trembling finger to his lips, as if to shush her, and then vanished into the night. Terrified, Emily called the police, but when they arrived, there was no sign of anyone. The only thing out of place was a small, crudely carved wooden doll left on her doorstep, its face twisted in agony. The officers exchanged uneasy looks, but chalked it up to pranksters. The next day, Emily decided to ask her neighbors more pointedly about the man. One elderly woman, Mrs. Hargrove, finally confided that years ago, a man had lived on the street who was accused of unspeakable crimes. Before the police could catch him, he disappeared without a trace. Since then, strange occurrences had plagued the neighborhood, lights flickering, pets disappearing, and that same tapping at night. That evening, Emily's television suddenly turned on by itself, displaying a static-filled image of the man's face staring directly at her. The whisper came again, this time clearer. "You can't leave." Panic rising, Emily packed a bag and fled, vowing never to return. But as she drove away, she caught a glimpse in the rearview mirror. Rows of houses, dark and silent, but one window remained lit. Behind the glass stood the pale figure, watching her go, waiting patiently for the next soul to wander too close in this perfect suburban nightmare.
Story number 3.
It started with a feeling. Something off, like a shadow lurking just beyond the edges of sight in a quiet suburban neighborhood. Jenna had just moved into her new home, a modest 2-story on a sleepy street where everyone seemed to know each other's names. But as the days passed, she realized this neighborhood held secrets darker than its pristine lawns and white picket fences suggested. The first night, she noticed the lights in the house across the street flickering erratically. That house had been empty for months. The blinds were always drawn tight, no matter the time of day. But tonight, a faint glow bled through the cracks. Jenna convinced herself it was just an electrical issue, but a knot twisted in her stomach. She told herself it was nothing. On her second evening, she was coming home late from work when she saw a figure standing at the end of her driveway, a tall silhouette, unnervingly still. When she blinked, it was gone. She told her neighbors the next day, but they just laughed it off as sleep deprivation or city nerves. No one else saw anything. But things escalated quickly. Her mailbox was emptied and stuffed with strange notes, scraps of paper with single words like watch, listen, and soon scrawled in jagged handwriting. No signature, no explanation. Jenna started locking all her doors and windows, but she couldn't shake the feeling that someone was always just outside, waiting. One night, a loud banging woke her. It wasn't on her door or windows, but from inside her walls. Thumps, tapping, dragging sounds that crawled beneath her skin. She grabbed her phone to call the police, but the signal vanished as if cut off by some unseen force. When the noise stopped suddenly, her screen flickered, and on it a distorted image of her own living room appeared, but twisted and darkened, like a nightmare mirror. The next day, Jenna decided to investigate the empty house across the street. The lawn was overgrown, the paint peeling, and the air felt thick and heavy. She found the front door unlocked, and inside, the stale smell of decay and something metallic, like old blood, stung her nose. As she walked through the rooms, she discovered walls covered in frantic scribbles, names, dates, and faces drawn in charcoal. Most disturbing were the words repeated over and over. "They're watching, always watching." Suddenly, she heard footsteps on the creaky stairs behind her. She spun around, but no one was there. Heart pounding, she bolted out the door. Once outside, she realized the streetlights were flickering again, and shadows moved unnaturally beneath them, stretching longer and darker than any natural form. Her neighbors began disappearing. One by one, houses went dark, their residents vanishing without a trace. The police refused to take her report seriously, claiming people moved away or went on vacation. But Jenna knew better. She could feel the weight of eyes behind every curtain and hear whispers just beyond the wind. Her own home became a prison. Mirrors cracked spontaneously, reflections warped to show grim faces staring back. Her phone rang incessantly, but when she answered, there was only silence. Then, a cold breath against her ear and a voice, so faint it could have been the wind, whispered, "You're next." One morning, Jenna's car was gone, and so was the driveway figure. The mailbox was stuffed with a final note, "Welcome home." It wasn't signed, but she knew exactly who it was from. She packed what little she could carry and fled. But as she drove away, the houses behind her seemed to lean in closer, their windows like eyes following her every move, silently promising that no matter where she ran, the neighborhood would never let her go.